We go. Everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another hour of good nature. I think I've got everything in place. Uh, Mike, I was enjoyed our conversation over the fence the other day, and you said that some of these episodes were like launching on roller skates for the first time. That's how I feel tonight. I had my visual aids all lined up here, but I also had the furry roommates lined up here, and one of the visual aids, here's a sneak preview, is missing. So I don't know if it got crunched or not, but maybe one of the furry roommates has a little more calcium in their diet thanks to that. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But yeah, I wanted to apologize for anyone who was expecting to have a Zoom meeting last week. I fully thought we were, and it wasn't until Miss Bonnie pointed out that there was no sign up available. I had forgotten that I had requested that night off, and that of course then sent me into a panic of why did I do that? Where am I supposed to be? And I realized it was because I thought I would need some extra time to prepare for the Conservation Foundation talk that we did last week on macroinvertebrates in the Fox River. So anyway, great to see y'all again. Thanks for tuning in. Before we get started with our 2 weeks worth of slides, I had a little bit of show and tell. It's a letter written in cursive even. It was such a thrill to receive and to read. And I love the way it starts out. He says, Ms. Otto, first, please accept my apology for the archaic handwritten letter sent via snail mail. I'm 80 and I've never felt a desire or a need to become tech literate. Doubtful that's likely going to change at this stage of the game. Sometimes my correspondence won't even reach its destination utilizing these outdated options. And if I'm successful, the recipient is often so amazed to be in possession of such an unexpected relic that it overshadows the subject matter contained therein. One even remarked that he'd keep it as a souvenir, exclaiming, most folks have never seen anything like this. I thought it was really cool too. He's a funny guy and an observant gentleman as well. He sent this article in, and it refers to a woman who works down in Springfield at the Illinois State Museum, and a little discovery that her cat made. I won't read the whole article, but it says Dr. Meredith Mahoney, a zoologist at the Illinois State Museum in Springfield and a steward, has made a surprising discovery which became a launch pad for significant research into an invasive insect. One day in 2022, Mahoney noticed her normally sleepy cat, Darcy, batting around an insect on the floor. She went down to take a closer look. It was a bug, a big bug. Mahoney said it had a very striking appearance. It was all black and had a pattern around the edge of its body. Now, at this point, I'm going to deftly switch over to our screen share. Let's pick this one, and then let's go drum roll to our slides for tonight. So this is what she saw. And this is what we call a kissing bug. It's described as being a menace to communities in South Latin America. They hunt at night, seeking out the faces of warm mammals. Once there, they clamp down and suck their blood. What's worse, they can transmit a disease, a parasite that causes Chagas disease, which in its mildest form causes fever, headaches, and swelling, but can advance to cause heart disease, digestive complications, and possible nerve damage. In rare cases, the disease can be lethal. Until now, kissing bugs weren't widely known to be present in the generally colder climates of North America, but a warming planet is creating new habitat for these species and allowing them to migrate north. Mahoney's discovery has led to a joint project between researchers at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and St. Louis University. They've teamed up to study where and how often these bugs have been found in Illinois and Missouri. All right, I'm going to stop there because the research is ongoing and they don't have results yet. This article ends by saying they do not currently pose a major threat, but Mahoney advises anyone who finds a kissing bug in their home to put it in a sealed container, freeze it, and report it to the Illinois Department of Public Health. So we actually occasionally get calls at the Nature Center about kissing bugs. And to my knowledge, they have not made it this far north in Illinois. This is the kissing bug. This is what she's referring to in this article. But we do have, we have similar bugs. And people find those in their houses. They do a reverse image search, or, they use either their Apple or their Android phone to look up the picture that they've just taken. And sometimes it cross matches to this, which is incorrect. What we do have around here in large quantities are these guys here. We see them pretty regular, especially if you're around a garden. If you happen to grow squash, these insects have a fondness for squash. They feed on squash, cucumbers too, I think. This is a squash bug. And if we compare it to a kissing bug, so kissing bugs, they're all in the same order. They've got the piercing and sucking mouth parts. They've got this triangle area here where their wings fold over their back. But if we look back here at the kissing bug, a much bolder, redder pattern. I think these are slightly larger bugs too. Squash bugs aren't small. They are, no. Poker, no. Let's see, let me advance here. They're, probably close to an inch from one end to the other. But they feed on plants. They have no interest in using that piercing and sucking mouth part to poke into your skin or give you a kiss. So people freak out when they see these. They also freak out when they see these, which often come into our houses as we go into fall. This is a Western conifer seed bug. It is actually got a little bit more bold markings, well, not bold, but a little bit more in the way of markings as compared to the other two. There's some fancy squiggles here, but the big difference is when you look here on the back of their legs. I guess that would be the tibia of the rear legs. They've got these, I think of them as bell bottoms, being the groovy insects that they are. Those little adornments are lacking on our squash bugs and on our kissing bug. Now, the article does make the point about the way things are warming up and how kissing bugs are expanding their range. So I suppose it doesn't hurt to be vigilant, but I guess I just wanted to put it out there that this is something that every year somebody sees a bug like this, not like this, like this, or like this, and they freak out. And to date, we have not had reports of kissing bugs this far north in the state. But it was neat to learn about that finding in Springfield, and also to get a letter written by hand. I thought that was really, really cool. I'll probably keep it as a souvenir too. Now this is a little mystery. This and I forgot to put my warning to sensitive viewers screen up, but this is a muskrat, and it's a flat rat. It was squished in the street, but it's not to my knowledge, anywhere near where you would expect to find muskrats. This was right outside. This is on 7th Street, just south of Main Street, right here in St. Charles. So, kind of near the turn lane to go into Thompson Middle School. So it's between Main Street and Walnut Street. It caught my eye one day, but it was a lot more trafficy there. The school was just letting out. And so it wasn't really safe to go and take a picture. So I went back in the evening and took a picture. This, by the way, this is the same area where I had the little run-in with the police officer last summer when I was trying to get the attention of a stray dog that was running back and forth across Main Street. And I laid down in the parking lot, and the policeman thought I was having a heart attack or something. There was a policeman in the area again, because this was probably 9 o'clock at night, and they do patrol that area pretty heavily. But he just kind of waved. It might have been the same guy. Anyway, got the picture, and then I went back and looked up where I had seen another muskrat, and I made this little map for you. So this red star here is where this unfortunate little creature was found. So here's Main Street, here's Walnut, here's Exhibit A. Over here, this is going back about 8 years. I found another dead muskrat in the road. And I don't know, my thought at the time was that they were coming up from the storm sewers, and that may still be the case, but I can't figure out. I was looking in the storm sewer trying to figure out how a muskrat, I never really thought of them as good climbers. I don't know how I can see how they would get in. They could swim into one of the many storm drain outlets that we have in our creeks and down at the Fox River, but I don't know how they're climbing out. Now, there is an unusual, or there's not too many that are still to sell. At this corner here, there's a storm drain, and it's like a big open slot. And I don't know if that means it's easier to climb out of. I would think it would be easier to climb into. But it's the mystery of the muskrats, and it continues. I still don't have a definitive answer on it, but this is the time of year when we're seeing dispersal. This muskrat did look fairly small, so I'm thinking it might have been a young one. The one that I found over here on Illinois Street, that was not small. It was an adult. But this one may have been dispersing. Maybe its parents kicked it out in advance of, or maybe this year's young have already been born. But there's something with muskrats moving around the city and turning up in weird spots. Now that we're talking, I should have made this map given a little bit different orientation. A few years ago, I walked in the St. Patrick's Day parade, and there were actually 2 dead muskrats by the Baker Hotel. So I don't know. If any of you have any thoughts, any hypotheses, or maybe you know the actual answer of what's going on with our muskrats on our city streets, I would love to hear it. But to me, it's sort of an intriguing little puzzle. This is why I can never be anywhere on time. I'm always, preoccupied with these thoughts of the nature around us. But anyway, muskrats are on the move. We'll leave it at that. And so are the salamanders. Ryan Solomon, our restoration ecologist, is continuing with, I think this project is now in about its 8th or 9th year. I mentioned it when we met a couple of weeks ago, but I have some better pictures I wanted to share with you. Here you can see in the background here, this is the setup for the trapping that's occurring in one of our natural areas that has hills, glacial deposits, and it also has ephemeral wetlands. So it's got the perfect setup for these salamanders to burrow down into the ground. That's where they spend 11 months out of the year. And then as things start to warm up, as the snow starts to melt, or in our case this year, as it just got, rainy and warm in February, they will come up out of the ground and they will head to those breeding ponds where they spend, each individual is down there for, I don't know, a week or two. The whole breeding period lasts a month to 6 weeks. The males do this little courtship dance with the females, and eggs are laid. The adults go back up to their burrows, and then the eggs hatch into little larval salamanders that look kind of like tadpoles, but they've got feathery gills on the sides of their head. They spend the next few months there in the ponds, as long as we have enough rain, or some of those ponds do get a little seepage from area springs. The important part is they don't want to dry up. The ponds can't dry up until the larval salamanders are out of there, or the baby salamanders aren't going to make it. But usually by early to mid-August, they are ready to complete their transformation. They start breathing air with lungs, and they walk out. They find suitable habitat to dig their own burrows, and then next year the process starts all over again. So what Ryan's been doing, he's continued a survey that was started by his predecessor, where they set up these traps. You can kind of see over there on the right side, the part of the trap. This would be the fence part. It's a low fence because salamanders aren't good climbers. It's actually roof flashing, and that's strung between pieces of conduit that have been hammered into the ground. And then there's gaps in these fences. Here you can see a little bit of the fence here too. These gaps are where buckets are sunk into the ground. You can see there's some water. There's also a sponge. There's some leaves in there. It's enough to make the salamanders somewhat comfortable. It's a good holding place. They're never there for more than a few hours because they move at night, and then Ryan makes sure the traps are checked before 7 a.m. each morning. So the salamanders then are pulled from these pitfall traps. They're measured. And when you measure a salamander, you go from the snout to the vent. And those measurements are recorded along with whether it's a boy or a girl. And then they're released into the water. Any particular year, he can expect to find, say, 90 to over 100. Last year, he only got 66 because of the weird weather. And he said this year, the weather is playing havoc too. So today's a good example. Today, we got rain, and rain is good for salamanders. They need to keep that skin moist, but it is so windy. A night like this, with the wind howling the way it is, I don't know that there would be much movement. The temperature has dropped too, although these guys are remarkably tolerant of cooler temperatures. Even though they're cold-blooded animals, they will sometimes be in the water when there's still ice out. So even though it's the temperatures have dropped here, it's still within the range that they would consider usual for this time of year. I will try and find out from Ryan how much longer those traps will be up, and see if we can get some numbers for you over the next couple of weeks to see how this year's weird weather compares to last year's weird weather in terms of what he was able to. He's fairly confident that that 66 from last year does not reflect all of the salamanders, but it was just, it really changed. Usually, and what is usual these days, really, right? But under what we had come to accept as their usual behavior. They would come up towards the end of February. They would move throughout the month of March. Traps would come down in early April. But with this warm and cold and windy and still, it's really changed. The migration has occurred in stops, fits and starts, I guess you could call it. So yeah, it's that's all data too, though. That's all important things to note, that it's just been another year of weird weather. So here, so let's stick with amphibians for just a little bit longer. You see this little guy here? Here's a little chorus frog. So this is at Pearson Creek Fen. This is a boreal chorus frog. Used to be known as the Western chorus frog, but they've done a little tinkering. They've learned some more about the genetics. So this is now called the boreal chorus frog. But I tell you, I was there the other day. This would be a week ago, last Friday. So it was a pretty decent day. The sun was out, wasn't too windy. And we were looking and looking for this little frog. It sounded like he was calling from right in front of us, right at the edge of this little wetland. But the acoustics in there, and maybe this is intentional. I would imagine it could deflect the sound. Maybe it would confuse predators. I'm hoping it doesn't confuse the female chorus frog, because that's the whole reason why he's singing. But it was really surprising to see how far out he was sitting and where he was calling from versus where that sounded like the sound was coming from. But he's nestled down in there. Look at the camouflage too. What gave him away was the movement of that vocal sac. That shape-wise, he looked like a broken off stalk or stem of a plant. Color-wise, he matches really, really well. And it was just this tiny little throat sac, which, gosh, it wasn't even as big around as well, maybe the size of a dime. Just tiny, tiny little frogs. Very, very loud voices, though. Broken away. So we went a little farther down the path, and we found this skull of a deer. Last fall, I remember seeing a doe that had been hit, and it was she didn't make it, and she was laying in the grass along Route 31, in the grass of the fen. So I'm kind of wondering if this is her remains. The reason I threw it in here was a few weeks ago we had talked about the sign of deer. Besides the tracks, when they're feeding, you can look for what's called deer browse, and it's where they have been feeding on plants. And I mentioned that deer do not have any top incisors, and this gives us a good view of what the dentition is on a white-tailed deer. We've got our molars back here. We've got a goodly long span here, and then a little bit of the tissue remains, but there's nothing here in terms of teeth. There's no teeth on the top. As a consequence, when a deer is grazing in an area, they are pulling and tearing on the vegetation. So you don't see real clean bite marks when a deer has been browsing or grazing in an area. They tear and pull, and it looks, sometimes the vegetation, it actually kind of curls, like you see on a ribbon, but it's never a clean bite like you would see from, say, a rabbit or some of our other rodents. Or some of our rodents, I should say. Rabbits aren't rodents, but our voles, beaver is a good example too. Muskrats, they will make a clean bite on the skin, these stems of the plants. Pearson Creek was burned. Pearson Creek Fen was burned a little over a month ago. Boy, and our burns went off easily, quickly, without a hitch. Our restoration crew was able to accomplish all of their burn goals much, much earlier than usual because of our early warmth and the periods of dry weather that we had, which is good. You don't want to, even though we've had some good conditions. In fact, Kane County has continued to burn. We've been seeing the return of a lot of ground nesting birds. The killdeer are back, the woodcocks are back. You don't want to have your burn season extend too far into the nesting season. So I was glad that our guys were done early on, because you don't want to be harming the organisms that are benefiting from your restoration efforts. So this is some of that burned ground. You can see there are plants that are coming back, and this is a week and a half ago. So we've got some rattlesnake master coming up here. The reason I took this picture, a lot of times you'll see this after a burn goes through an area, and it looks kind of like a bird's nest on the ground. These are voles' nests. I did peek underneath. The vole's nest was empty, but that's how they shelter a lot of times, is they will nip off a whole lot of plant material, and they'll make this inverse cup that they hang out underneath. Sometimes if you find one, I know one time a vole made a nest right in one of the paths out at Hickory Knolls, and I lifted the nest up, and there were 4 little babies underneath it. I don't know. I didn't get back out there to see if they survived or not. It wasn't terribly well hidden. I can only imagine. There's coyotes out there. There's the occasional fox. There's hawks. There's owls. There's people with dogs. So I don't know. Those are probably vole genes that shouldn't get spread very far along. Normally though, they are much more hidden, and this is a good example. This is a good time of year if you're in a park or preserve that's been burned. You can see these things. It's kind of cool to see, because every once in a while you lift them up and there's a vole underneath. Let's see here. What else we have? Oh, so this was the purpose of our walk at Fearsome Creek Fen, was to see how the skunk cabbage is doing, and it is doing really well. The restoration efforts there are really it used to be well, it was almost all reed canary grass. If we went back, say 20 some years ago. And then the efforts to control the reed canary grass allowed the invasive cattails to move in. So we went from one park full of grass to another era of cattails. A lot of those cattails have now been successfully conquered, and we're really seeing a lot of great diversity there of sedges, plants like turtlehead, and then the skunk cabbage, which this is Fearsome Creek Fen has always had skunk cabbage, but there's so much more of it now, and it's showing up in places that we didn't used to see it. So that was kind of exciting, very exciting. We accomplished our goal. I mentioned turtlehead, so I talked to Ryan today. This is kind of exciting news. Fearsome Creek Fen, due to the restoration efforts, is we're completing paperwork now to become a release site for the or an incubation site for the Baltimore checker spot butterfly, which is an unusual species and one that is very conservative, very picky about where it wants to live. And so Ryan was actually going through old records today. No one can recall actually seeing a Baltimore checker spot at Fearsome Creek Fen. I do recall seeing, the only time I've ever seen a Baltimore checker spot, it was at a Kane County Forest Preserve up in what is that, Gilbert's, up at Freeman Kane. They did try a reintroduction at Bluff Spring Fen, but this was a few years ago. There was a little miscommunication between the insect people and the plant people, and the plant people burned the fen at an inopportune time, and the checker spots had not been seen since then. So I think they're going to reboot and try that effort again, but they're also considering, other sites, and Fearson, because of this improved biodiversity there, is now on that list. So that's pretty exciting news too. I like this picture because there's some seeds here. You can see there's some rubble from the burn, but if we zoom in here, this is a seed from last year's skunk cabbage. Now, I don't know if that means it's, in fact, there's another one there too. I don't know if that means that they're no good because they didn't germinate, or if it takes, maybe it's a multi-year cycle. I don't know what to make of it, but um, uh, it's a good sign that the skunk cabbage, this was in an area that used to be all reed canary grass. So the fact that it's got this, and this is one of many, many plants that were over on this side of the trail. It's a very cool sign of what's been done and of things to come too. Oh, there's the nerds. So we switched gears after we had found those the skunk cabbage, and we started looking at shells. And that was my visual aid that disappeared. I've got here a couple of shells. If you do happen to go to the fen, what you'll notice, you look for the vole nests before the grass grows back too tall, before the plants come back too much, but also and look for the skunk cabbage. But then also you will notice there are thousands, absolutely thousands of these little snail shells. They are about the size of a nickel, maybe. The bigger ones are. Some of them are only about the size of a dime. The reason we were looking for them is, well, one, they're pretty cool. But two, there is a little bee. It's a mason bee, and it's Asmia conjuncta, and they are obligate snail shell nesters. It means so mason bees are known to nest in cavities of different sizes, but this little bee has, over time, found that little snail shells like this match up with their needs. And that's they don't nest anywhere else. They only nest in snail shells. I come across this study that was up in Ontario, Canada. There's an area that has a lot of an introduced snail species. And they were looking at how the increased number of shells may have offered greater nesting opportunities for that bee. What we were hoping to do was find some shells that had bee nests in them. Problem is you can't really tell unless you crack them open, and we certainly didn't want to destroy the nesting habits or efforts of these bees. But this is a picture from the study. I don't know, it's probably not going to let me. I just did a cut and paste on this, so I don't think we can zoom in. But so the outer coils of the shell have a lot of debris, but then you go farther in. When these bees build their nests, they'll lay an egg, they'll provision it with nectar and pollen, and then they build a little partition, and then they lay another egg, provision it, partition, another. So you'll get this coil of little incubation chambers for this little bee. It's really intriguing. convinced they have to be out there. I just have to refine a little bit the methods, because there's all these thousands of shells. How can you tell if any of them have bees inside of them? The other thought I had was that these shells would make really good earrings. Uh-oh, where'd we go? There we go. I think they would make cute earrings. They're just about the right size. Just have to figure out how to mount them. It could be the fashion statement for this year. One other thing, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago when we were talking about Esther, the Esther Duncan, the European brown snail that now lives with my friend Peggy out in DeKalb County. There's not many snail experts out there. Now, we do have one of our KCCNers, our King County Certified Naturalist class. There is a woman whose son was a marine and estuary biology major, and as such, he had to take a snail ID class. So he's really, I keep sending him different things, and now I want to send him this information and see if he's, if he's aware of if he's ever discovered any nests in any of the snail shells that he's been examining, and two, if he can tell us, do we have any of that introduced snail species here? He did identify another species for us last fall at the Fen, and that was a native snail. But I'm curious now to see what we got going on out there. But it's just I was thinking about this the other day. It doesn't matter what you find when you're outside, but it is always, it's never the whole story. There's always more to it. So when I first noticed these snail shells a few years ago, my thought was, wow, we got a lot of snails there. But now, knowing that there's bees that nest in there, that's more of the story. And then usually when there's a bee, it's going to have some sort of checks and balances attached to it. So there's probably a parasite that, or parasitoid that lays its eggs on the bees that are developing in the shells. And then there's probably some sort of even smaller parasite that relies on that. It just keeps going and going. It doesn't matter what you find. It's never existing on its own. It's always attached to all kinds of other things. It's just so cool. Now this little guy came motoring along. This is not a squished muskrat, but a live one. And the reason I included it, it's a quick little clip, but if you look carefully at the back of the body, you can see that tail propelling. See, it's swish, 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 back and forth, back and forth. Watch it one more time and I'll keep my cursor out of the way. See how it's pushing back and forth, back and forth. Beavers, they propel themselves with their rear legs. Their hind feet have huge, the feet are good size. They're about the size of a kindergartner's feet. But then they've got webbing between the toes and they push themselves along that way. Muskrats rely on the power of their tail. Which does them no good when they're trying to cross the street in town. But it's kind of a fun little find there along there. And then as we're looking at snail shells, you of course find other things. And this is a pile. It's not a huge pile of deer scat, and it's quite dry. It's been there a while. But it can be sometimes confusing to tell deer scat from bunny scat. Rabbits, if a rabbit has hunkered down in a mass of grass, especially in the winter time, they'll do this. They'll be stationary for a while. They can eliminate quite a few pellets while they're sitting there. And at first glance, these looked fairly round, but then when we look closer at them, you can see they've got almost an acorn shape to them, and that's classic deer. Even though this is small for deer scat, that shape is the giveaway there. That was left by probably not the deer whose skull we found, but more than likely some of her relatives. Now this is not new, but it relates in that I reran this topic. It's going to run in this week's King County Chronicle and King County Connects. This is a picture that dates back 10 years. This was 2014. I remember it well. I was actually, it was the first Sunday in April. I was at the Kane County Flea Market and my phone rang. And it was our park safety officer. And he said, do you want some more rabbits? At that time, we just had Peter Rabbit, which one rabbit really is plenty to take care of. We didn't need any more at the nature center, but he said, yeah, I found a whole box of bunnies. So we thought at the time, so these, there was it 8? There were a lot. There was one, in addition to what's here in the box, there was one other one that was hopping around. And what do you do? There are a lot of rabbit rescues, but this was a Sunday, and what Tim ended up doing was calling Critters Pet Shop in South Elgin, and they agreed to take them. One of the rabbits was missing a foot and an ear. We thought at the time that maybe, somebody was using them to train dogs with or something, but then we later learned that when rabbits are kept under poor conditions, if things are overcrowded or dirty, they'll turn on each other. And I think that's probably the case here. You can see even the box that they were dumped in was filthy. The good news is that Critters came through. They got all of the rabbits cleaned and vet checked, medicated, patched up, anything they needed. And then they made sure that each one of the rabbits got a good home too. The point of the column this week is to just remind people that it's a bad idea to give live bunnies as pets. I can guarantee you this will not be the only time this has happened. In fact, I found a ferret one time at Fearsing Creek Fen that I found the box, and it had a little dish of water and it had a little can of cat food, and then the ferret came bounding up out of the bushes because it was scared. Even though it's a predator, it was, out of its element. We ended up taking that one up to Anderson Animal Shelter. But yeah, you never know what you're gonna find when you head out. And doggone, I wish people would just be a little bit more responsible with their animals. Anyway, speaking of animals, this was a donation. We've had her now for several years at the nature center. So instead of letting it go, somebody who couldn't keep their tarantula anymore donated her. This is Ruby. This is another quick video, but it illustrates very well their defensive technique of flipping these. They're called urticating hairs. They're hairs that are actually meant to come off. You can see she's given herself a little bald spot there because she does get a little peeved every time we clean her cage. But those hairs, by flicking them there with those back legs, the hairs release. They're urticating. In my head, that it means that they release, but in my head it means irritating, because there's little barbs on the end of the hairs. They get into your skin. It's itchy. It feels kind of like fiberglass, if you've ever handled fiberglass without gloves on. But old Ruby here was putting on a fine. We had a dedication ribbon cutting at the nature center, where we were showing our new nature preschool room, Acorns to Oaks. And there was quite a few people there at the nature center, and some people had questions about spiders and were we afraid of getting bitten. And we answered, well, we're not afraid of getting bitten, but we do not like to get those hairs on our skin. That way she's able to save her venom for more important things, like capturing her prey, which is insects. So now we come to last Friday. Look at the difference, even though it's a week later than the first round of skunk cabbage. It was pretty cold last Friday. This is a different park too. This is Glenwood Park Forest Preserve in Batavia. And there's that whole stretch there, if you're familiar with it, it's about 2 miles south of Wilson Street on Route 25 on the east side of the Fox River. And there's a really thriving stand of skunk cabbage there. But that it's very wet, seepy, springy, springy as in springs coming out of the ground. Here's two that are converging here. All of the green that you see here, that's all skunk cabbage. Many of these are actually starting to already send up leaves. They've already bloomed and are sending their leaves up. This all right, but probably should have put up another little warning. This was I thought a really exquisite example of how twisty the canine wild canine digestive tract is. This piece of scat, and there was more to it too. It was just it was too spread out to put in a single shot. But look at there's no question at all that this is from a wild dog. Our domestic dogs, between their diet and their different their digestive tract has changed over time. The twists aren't as strong in the digestive process for them. But look at the twists and the turns of this. I have to say, I give it a 10. This is a different scat, same path, different scat, but wow, they're getting really creative now. They're putting down numbers. All right, we won't dwell on that. Let's move on. So this was a photo that was texted in. This was up at, I believe this was James Pate Phillip State Park. The question was, what's going on here? What are these mounds? Well, it's two things. I was kind of puzzling over these things too, and I'm happy that other people were noticing them. It gave me a chance to dig in a little bit. This is it's two things going on. It's prairie grasses and it's ants. It turns out that our most common prairie grasses are big blue stem, our Indian grass, our prairie dropseed. There are ants that will colonize amid the crown of these plants, and the studies are they've determined that there is a relationship, but there's more studies that need to be done to figure out exactly is it the kind of a which came first thing, is that it's the prairie grass growing and the ants are attracted to it, or does the grass start to grow where the ants have a colony? But the plants, the prairie grasses that are growing in these mounds are thriving. The roots appear to be better aerated, and there's more shoots per plant that are coming out. The growth is thicker and lusher, and it's apparently thanks to the ants. They're good size too. This is probably 2-3 feet tall. I noticed these as similar sorts of structures when they burned Peck Farm Park last fall, the prairie out there. You could see these mounds too. And at that time, I thought, because some of a lot of our grasses do have this sort of bunch forming, mound forming type of growth. And I thought it was just the grass, but there is a relationship between the grass and the ants that proves to be beneficial for both of them. So keep your eyes on this. Again, if there's an area near you that's been burned, a prairie area, add this one to the list too, besides looking for voles and possibly snail shells. Keep your eyes open for this too, because it's a neat relationship. There's a few different ant species that are associated with prairie grasses, but there was one in particular. It was Lasius. I'm going to draw a blank on the species name, but there are other ants too that you might see other mounds that are maybe smaller, like maybe this one looks like another ant mound. There were many different types of ants that can live in this area, but only a few are associated with the prairie grasses. It's cool to see all this because once things green up and the other plants start to grow, this is going to be hidden again until next winter. So just a little follow-up. When we did meet 2 weeks ago, it was warm enough. I was sitting out on my deck. I kept hearing that crunching sound. I expressed a little bit of concern. I was wondering what tech support puppy had gotten himself into. I don't know if you can see there. So I'd had some work done in the backyard, had to have part of the sewer pipe replaced. Apparently one of the workers had left a water bottle there. So and I tell you, this boy, I have bought him so many different toys. He has one chew toy in the house that he likes, but he doesn't like frisbees. He doesn't really have any fondness for balls to fetch with, tennis balls, things like that. I bought him a big jolly ball because I thought he might like that. He didn't like that. I bought him a jolly ball with a rope on it. He didn't like that, but he has had the most fun with this water bottle. And I think it's because of the crunching. Maybe it does to him. He does have a bit of a prey drive, and maybe the crunching of the plastic there reminds him of the crunching of the prey. All right, we're going to wrap up, folks, with this picture here. This was sent in by Jerry. I don't know if you're on tonight, Jerry. I didn't take a good look at the sign up for tonight, but oh, is that you? No. Jerry has a screech owl in her neighborhood.
She's in Tennessee, Pam.
What was I there?
She's in Tennessee right now.
Well, doggone.
I know. She didn't take me with her either.
Well, and you know what, Lori, you sound enough like her, you can fill in.
Oh, I can make it up.
Well, it's kind of funny because Laura and Jerry are sisters, and a few years back, Laura brought some of her third grade students when she was still teaching, brought them out for a bird walk. You remember this, Laura? It was a winter day.
Yeah. It was with Bob Mandrini was leading it.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you never know when you're out with third graders and they say they see an owl. It might be an owl, but it might be a wasp nest or a plastic bag or a clump of leaves, but it was a screech owl looking very much like this, right, Laura?
Right. Yeah. And right along the road leading to the boys' home. And really, she said, I see an owl. And none of us believed her. And
Yeah,
we looked closer. Yep.
Well, that day has taught me to never walk past a tree cavity without taking a second look, because and look at how well this little guy is camouflaged. This is the red color phase of the color morph of the screech owl. There's also a gray one, but they're not very big. They're what, about 10 inches tall, maybe. And the way it blended in, the way the light was hitting it and everything, it's really really was a great find. Now Jerry also sent a video, so I think I am like 0 for 5 or so, and in this screen sharing there's something else I have to do in order to get the video to play. And she said you can't really see the owl, but you can hear it. So I'm going to see if it will play. Are you guys seeing a little traffic cone?
Yep.
Is that showing?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see now if this will play. Can't see, but you're going to hear it shortly now. You hear that? Did that work? Maybe I need to turn it up. Play it one more time. Thought it was a nice way to, and right about. Oh, I love that sound. Did everybody get to hear that?
No, I actually couldn't really hear it, Pam. Although I heard it on the video she sent me on the phone, so I believe you.
Oh, shoot. Well, it's a haunting sound. It's actually shortly after we moved to this neighborhood. That was in 1993, and it was before the houses went in behind us here. There was a screech owl. There was an old a couple old catalpa trees back there, and I was catalpas sometimes will get some wonderful cavities in them, and I suspect it was nesting in the tree. All right, we'll end with this then. We'll just look at the pretty picture. Screech owls, it's always such a bonus when they show up. Our great horned owls, of course, are the main birds that we're seeing, owl wise. But yeah, keep your eyes open, check those tree cavities out. The screeches are there, and they are really cool to see. That takes us to 9 o'clock. Does Annie, it looks like we got one chat here to cover. Put the bottle in a sock so they can't cut their mouths. You hear that, buddy? You take better care of Mouse than I do. Chris is commenting on her dog and how she makes sure that it doesn't get hurt by
You
chewing.
could also, if you put a little treat inside the bottle and then wrap it in the sock, it'll drive them nuts.
Oh, hear that, buddy? Yeah, he finally, because it had a lot of water in it, and he finally, I was surprised that he hadn't actually broken, because it's not very thick plastic. But he finally chewed it open so that the water was starting to drain out. So I'll have to try that, Chris. I'll put a little treat in there for him and see how long it takes him to completely shred it. All right, folks, well, that's what we had tonight. We'll be back again next week with more good nature. In the meantime, don't blow away. And enjoy the coming weekend if you celebrate, and see you back again next Tuesday. Take care, everybody.
Pam. Good night.
Thank you, Pam.
Pam.
Bye.
Hey, Pam.
Good one.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
There we go. See ya.
Bye.